Welcome to the Contractor Success Forum. Today we're talking about workers' compensation and what you need to know about workers' compensation. So we here have Stephen Brown with McDaniel Whitley Bonding and Insurance Agency and Wade Carpenter with Carpenter and Company CPAs. And I am Rob Williams, Irongate Entrepreneurial Support Systems and writing the Pumpkin Plan for Contractors book, because we are here at the Contractor Success Forum to help you discuss how to run a more profitable, successful construction business. And one of those ways to be more profitable is to get your workers' coverage in place, but the cost down. What do we think about that? Have you ever seen workers' comp costs be kind of high weight in your accounting career?
Oh, absolutely. I think we see all the time it's one of those factors that contractors don't figure into their overhead, and it can be a huge issue as well as it can be a cash flow issue when they're not expecting a big bill and then they got to come out of pocket thousands and thousands of dollars. So Stephen's going to tell us a lot more about that.
Well, I wanted to title this, guys, Workers' Comp Can Be Fun, but it's just not true.
Oh my gosh, it's so much fun today. Workers' comp and fun.
Not true. It's not true. But, there's some things that our listeners need to know about workers' comp, how it's priced, how you pay for it, how you deal with claims, how do you keep your experience mod down so you can get those good contracts. So that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about. In my years and years of doing this, I've had a lot of workers' comp claims. Unfortunately, I had 3 fatality claims, but the most interesting claim I ever had was, the title of it was testicular tension. It was a weightlifter that was working at the paper mill over in Pickwick, was decking a roof for my contractor, and he was carrying 4x8 sheets of 1/4-inch CDX plywood on his shoulder, and he was carrying something like 6 or 8 sheets on his back, and he climbed up the ladder, and when he stepped off to put them down, he straddled a beam. And
I'm not sure I want to hear where this goes here.
There was a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I'd like to see that write up on workers. You don't think they passed that one around the office when you sent that one in, do you?
Well, also had a guy bust a guy in the head with a wrench. He said something about his sister. That was not covered by workers' comp. But there's a lot of crazy things happen. The construction business is dangerous. Things happen. It's more dangerous than other occupations. All our listeners know that. And I think really what everybody wants is for their workers to go home safely. If somebody gets hurt, then you got to get someone to replace them, right? And that costs money. And then you've got the expense of maybe your workers' comp costs going up. And you also have a responsibility as employer to try to get your employee home safely at the end of the day. So that's everything. So how do you do all this stuff? That's what I thought I'd talk about a little bit.
I think there's a lot we can talk about. I know one of the things that I see all the time is these contractors will cross state lines and they don't even think about the different laws and stuff like that. So
that's right. It's amazing where you can file a workers' comp claim. Here in Memphis, where we're located, we have Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri. These are all states that are literally in our state almost. We interact so much in the Mid-South. But what you have to make sure is on your workers' comp insurance policy that you have all the states that you operated in listed. Used to be you could put this thing called an all states endorsement that just covered all the states. They don't like to do that anymore. Things have changed, so you need to check your policy and make sure the states where you're working are covered. So as a general rule, if your location is, say, Tennessee, and you operate in other states and your employee lives and works in Memphis, say, and they go down to North Mississippi to work, they're covered under Tennessee workers' comp law. But there's also situations where some states' benefits are better than your state. So when they call that phone number while they're recuperating at home of that lawyer, they're going to try to file in the state that has the best benefits. Well, you know that. So make sure your state's covered under your policy. Oh, that's a good point, Wade.
Well, I see it here in Georgia too, that guys will go down to Florida and say, I don't know if they've had some really bad losses on electrical. Obviously, if somebody gets electrocuted, somebody gets killed. But the rates and crossing the state lines can be outlandish. And what's even more scary is that they're not covered and they have a loss like this and they're somewhere else.
Yeah. Don't assume you're covered. Check with your agent. Make sure you're covered in that state. Florida has a
Yeah.
lot of construction going on. So there's
Yeah,
a lot of injuries and a lot of cost.
I never really considered the difference in the laws. I just knew the rates were different. So
Yeah.
when we had the different policies, like, gosh, but I do know Mississippi, when we were down there, the capital of Mississippi, I had heard from a business owner, they were looking at moving their business because apparently that county was the number one large lawsuit claim county in the whole country, where all the lawyers wanted to file in there and people were just running for Mississippi and trying to get out of there. What do you call it when the limit of the torch had to be limited or something like that? It
Statute of
was crazy.
limitations.
No, not statute of limitation for time, but like the cap value, because they were giving you break your toe and they'll give you a few $1,000,000. It was crazy.
Well, so you got to be aware of what's going on and where you're working. I have a number of customers who work all over the country, and things are different in all the states. There's some states that are monopolistic. You got to get the workers' comp through the state-funded pool only, so you can't add it to your insurance policy. And then there's states you have to add by endorsement. Also, guys, workers' comp is going down. The premiums are going down because the rates are going down, and that's because all the laws have gotten tougher. And that helps support the insurance company on these big settlements. So
Wow.
you might wonder, what does workers' comp pay?
Yeah.
Stephen, what does workers' comp pay?
Well, workers' comp pays 2/3 of your weekly salary for being hurt or disabled. If you're permanently or partially disabled, it pays an amount based on what kind of disablement you have. If you lose a finger or a hand or an arm, there's a dollar amount put on that. And if, unfortunately, there's a fatality involved, it's usually 20% of a cap amount set by each state. So in Tennessee, it's about $100,000. There's a $500,000 cap. And also it'll pay $10,000 for the funeral expenses. I hate to bring it up, guys, but in each fatality, and from talking to other folks that have gone through the same thing, when you go through this, the one lesson that everybody learns and takes away is, if you're doing something risky on the job, especially particularly risky, or something you're worried about, you need to have a toolbox session on that topic. You can get the material from your agent or from me. Just let me know what the toolbox is and I'll email it to you. But have your employees there and have them sign off on the safety meeting. And 2 of the 3 fatality claims I had, the employees were at a toolbox meeting and understood the risk, and they had very intense topics on it. One of them was just a guy knocking over a tree with the bulldozer, a young guy with a family of 4, and they had just had a session the day before. Don't do it. A lot of these trees are dead and top. They'll fall down and they're widow makers. And one of them was. Another one was just fall protection and excavating. When a trench caves in, it's amazing how much dirt weighs. And those claims are usually fatalities, fortunately. So anyway, that's all there is to know about that. So workers' comp is based on payroll. Okay. So it's percent of your payroll. So it's per 100 of payroll. It's a percent. So each classification has different percents assigned to it. And you say, well, how do I know what the best rate is? Well, that's your insurance agent's job to shop it around for you.
Right.
I
I was
started
hoping we
off-
were going to move past the death claim stuff too, but
Oh,
obviously that's,
yeah.
you know,
Well, I wanted to as quickly as possible. Guys, I think it's important to know that stuff.
Yeah, because when I was just talking, I sometimes forget about the general liability versus the workers' comp. We're talking about workers' comp, but I gave you an example earlier, and that actually probably would have fallen under the general liability laws.
Right. General liability is based on per $1,000 of payroll rate. You get that from the agent, and you plug those two together, and you take a percentage of your labor burden, and that goes to workers' comp. I urge my contractors to make sure that they put that into job cost.
Yeah.
It's just the right thing to do.
But we always had a burden percent that we figured out what those were.
And if your subs didn't have insurance, you probably made money off of them, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, we did. We were lucky. We had that self-insured pool back then in Mississippi when the rates had gotten crazy, and that pool that the home builders and the ABC had put together. Actually, Dad had formed it with the ABC president of that, and that rate was dramatic. It was about half of what the other guys were getting. So they often wanted to be on ours, but we still didn't want them to be on ours. But we still had them a lot, and we made a good percent on that because we had superintendents in the neighborhoods that were enforcing the safety and enforcing whatever happened. I think the fraud claims often seem to be one of our bigger problems than the actual accidents themselves. And we had people turn in the fraud claims when people would do that. We had a guy on one of my sites showed up. I think I said this on an earlier show. He showed up to work Monday morning with a broken back, and apparently his wife or girlfriend or whatever was mad at him for whatever he did. He had broken his back on Saturday night and waited until Monday morning to come into work. And he came into work and he falls down with a broken back. I don't know how the heck he did it, but his girlfriend told on him, and I think he went to jail. That wasn't us prosecuting him; it was the insurance company.
Yeah, and there's a lot of old high school football injuries that pop up later on the job site. But you're right. And one of the most interesting people that we used to always have at our insurers luncheons were private detectives that do workers' comp work. They would show great video and footage of folks that were in neck braces, taking them off and climbing up in the deer stand, and kind of worse like that, but out and out fraud. So anyway, workers' comp rates have come down because there's more laws that protect the workers' comp carrier, especially drug related. If you're under the influence and you're drug tested, then we're just going to deny the claim. I had one claim, it was a fatality where the guy had lowered the boom down on a crane. He was using a wrecking ball to bust up some concrete. And he lowered the boom all the way to the ground and was going to take out the tip. And they had the pins that held the tip in, and the crane boom was sitting down on the ground. And he went with his buddies for lunch there by the airport on Brooks Road where all the strip joints were. And he apparently drank a lot, snorted a lot of coke, and did something up. But he was high as a kite when he got back. And he got underneath that boom crane, and instead of resting it on a backhoe or something for support, he knocked the pin out standing underneath it. And it was very interesting. Within, I don't know, an hour of the claim, his girlfriend and her attorney, his father and his attorney, and his mother and her attorney were there. Anyway, here's the thing. They drug tested him. Not one penny was paid. Nothing.
Wow.
Not anything. And so, nevertheless, these laws work.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, can we move on to something more fun to talk about? Like,
let's just talk about classification.
Classification
Wade,
rates.
I want to put all my employees as clerical. This class code is 8810. Clerical is cheap. It's only like 10 or 20 cents per 100 instead of this 5%
well, I mean,
rate.
These paper cuts can be really nasty.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you're doing clerical out on the job site and you fall in a hole. Okay, you can't do that, guys. You can't get away with it. You can't. That's just something. But what if I want to say I'm doing a lot of roofing, which is an expensive class? Oh, by the way, bridge painting is the most expensive one. It's $240 per $100 of payroll.
Wow.
And also, I had an electrician who was changing the light bulbs on the bridge, Rob. Found out about that in the newspaper one morning, and so did the insurance underwriter. Was reading the paper too, and there he was dangling with ropes. He also said in there that he had invented a rope system that guaranteed his workers wouldn't get hurt. And I had him classified as an interior electrical work.
Oh,
that was a fun morning. So anyway, classification, you got to classify them what they do. Now, here's the thing about construction, Wade and Rob, is you can break that classification down by hour. You have someone who's generally an electrician that you may have do some carpentry. Well, you want to keep them in electrical. It's lower. This is something that your insurance agent should be coaching you up on all the time. And one thing that you should have your agent do, and they may kill me for saying this, but if they're good agents, they won't. Ask them to come help you prepare for your first audit. So What am I talking about? Audits. Well, I'm talking about the insurance company sending out their auditor or an independent auditor that they hire to do audits for them to gather your information. Some companies just do it on an honor system. But even then, you have to turn in your 941 quarterly tax reports, show what your payroll was. They want a copy of any insurance certificates from subcontractors. And if you have any subcontractors that don't have insurance, you're paying for it. Well, that's just the way it is. Every general contractor knows that they got to get insurance certificates on every sub or they are paying for it. So most general contractors say, well, I'm not paying you until I get my certificate.
Can I stop you on that? Because a lot of contractors don't know that they, especially when they're getting started, they don't know that they have to cover these subs. And the first time, I think they figured that out pretty quickly. But I guess something we were talking about before this, it seems like these auditors are out to get blood. They want to put everybody in the highest classification, the one that costs the most. And as somebody that's dealt with these for many contractors over the years, it seems they do anything and everything to jack up the cost of it. So can you talk to that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there's an outfit called the National Council on Compensation Insurance, NCCI. They set all the rules. They're judge arbitrators. They provide that service for all the states. So anyway, the rule says, Wade, that if you don't classify your employee and break out what they do, they can put all that payroll in the highest rated classification. Yeah, they're going to do that. If your highest classification of what you do is roofing and you don't classify them, they're going to throw that payroll under roofing. So that's just what they do.
I just went through one in the last 3 months where the contractor's daughter mainly did stuff in the office. They asked her what she did, and sometimes she'd go out to the job site and deliver materials or just take paperwork or something like that. Well, the auditor put all of her payroll into a worker classification. And
well, the agent should have gotten that overturned. Remember when you're audited, you can get what's called worksheets. They used to send them to me as an agent, and now because of HIPAA laws or something, they say they can't automatically send them to me. So I got to get them from the customer. But if you say you think your audit's wrong, let's get the worksheets and let's go over them. That's something could definitely be fought and you could win. But that's what they do, and you have to fight it. That's why you have a good insurance agent, guys. Yeah. Also, here's the thing that ticks off a lot of contractors, a lot of them that go in, they want to look at your general ledger. Any idea, Wade, why they would want to look at your general ledger?
Well, you can put contractors in all kind of other places, materials or something. You can bury it all over the place. So
that's right.
That's what they're looking for. The other part about it is these insurance certificates and finding these, even if you get them up front, if they're out of date and you no longer work with that sub, they're not going to throw that payroll out.
Right. And then you've got a supplier that has a name that may sound like a subcontractor, and you got to battle that. So, folks, the more you know about insurance audits, the easier it is. So ask your agent to come help you prepare. Lay everything out. Show how you have things classified. Back in the old days, guys, I made sure that I was there at the audits. That's the only way I could differentiate myself, is to show up and help my customers with audits. Or new customers, I would offer to do that. And they were like, yeah, okay, you can be my agent. So anyway, we made sure we had donuts and coffee. We had everything that we knew they wanted to see laid out. And we had all the employees classified. And they would be so happy. They would just take it. We'd make copies for them. So they just look everything over and eat donuts, and we chit-chat, and they would leave, and it was done. That's the way it can be done. And guys, if you're not doing monthly reporting right now on your payroll, set that up. It's so easy. You list all the classifications that you have. Now, you still get audited at the end of the year, but if you're doing it right, you should know anything. Right. So basically, when you have months that you don't have any work going on, you don't have to pay workers' comp. Yeah. So just something to think about.
That's another good point, because we have some that are actually doing weekly reporting, and there's some things that when we're doing like construction payroll, but it's a lot easier to pay it as you go instead of coming back a year later and trying to catch up because you had a whole bunch more subs and stuff like that. And
it sure is.
You said something about a material supplier that sounds like a subcontractor, but we have subcontractors that provide materials as part of what they do.
In that situation, you need to note it. And if it's all materials, we could show that auditor invoices for just material charges.
Well, see,
If
so
we
that's
don't
that's
have
where
that,
the
they take
problem.
half.
Yeah, that's where the problem comes in. Is sometimes these subs don't break it out on their invoices. So the assumption of the auditor is if it just they're part materials and subcontract labor, then they're going to throw the whole thing in there. So probably not a bad idea to tell our listeners, maybe go tell your subs to break out those materials and things like that on their invoices.
Yeah, Wade, when we had those situations, those were some of the ones that we didn't want to cover on the insurance. We're like, you need to go get your workers' comp insurance if when it got confusing like that. And that, like the plumbers, I think was a big one on that. We actually quit hiring plumbers for the material. We bought the material and they started doing the labor on our houses. So they were only providing labor. That was an interesting one.
Well, subs ought to be able to mark up their materials like all their other expenses, but sometimes you can get a better price. And if you're issuing the contract, you're calling the shots, I guess.
Yeah. Stephen, the classification, we had a really interesting one when I had the wood truss factory on the framing inside there. And I didn't realize that the different insurance companies or the different organizations had different classifications. I'm still not really clear on that. That's the only time I saw that. And it was crazy. Another company came in with a whole different set of classifications that our previous one didn't have. And our insurance rate went down dramatically because they were not really framers. I think they had these guys that were framing the wood trusses inside the factory, but then they became
Yeah,
were
it was a
in wood.
manufacturing risk, not construction.
Yeah,
And that's a huge difference. That is a huge difference.
yeah, it was enormous. And
Because if
but
it's not a
even
construction classification, you're not out on ladders and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. And it got interesting because those guys did go out sometimes. That was very
Yep.
confusing. That was a mess. So it was such a mess that I think we quit letting them go out because, like, when it was down stuff, sometimes we would go out and frame a house. That's probably a workers' comp audit nightmare when you've got those guys and it's okay, let's go do some stuff in the field because the factory's kind of slow.
Well, I would say like Schultz, I hear nothing. I
Yeah.
see nothing. But
We classified it and everything,
and
but
that kind of
it got into a battle in the audit, you know?
well, don't worry, Rod. They're not going to come back and re-audit you from this podcast. The whole idea is just to be fair. And like you said, Wade, they're just out to get as much money as they can. Well, if you don't do your job classifying it, then they are. It's just a fact of life. Don't get your feelings hurt. It's just what's going to happen. But Rob, like you were saying, how you classify what your folks do. You have one guy that does 20 different things. Generally classify them for what they do the most of. And then don't put them under clerical and don't put them under roofing. Put them at a fair rate. There are some workers' comp rates, as a general rule, across every state are all about the same. So in the old days, they would do this, but now they're all kind of level. So it's just not as big a deal as it used to be. Guys, before we finish up, I know this has been an outstandingly exciting topic.
Outstanding.
But two quick things I want to tell our listeners. Experience mods. They're called experience rating mods, ERMs, and they are put together by that outfit I was telling you about. And they take your claims and for the last 3 years, but they toss the previous year. So your most current year, you might say, last year I didn't have any claims at all. Yeah, but the 3 years prior to that, you had a lot of claims. Okay, so the experience mod starts off with every new contractor is a 1.00. And I've had customers with experience mods as low as a 0.64 and as high as 2.6. Anyway, the experience mod haunts you for 3 years. You have a lot of claims. So, as a contractor, how do you budget for that? Well, your agent can run projections to let you know what your mod's going to be based on your current payrolls and being loss free. So you have a goal if you're curious. But, a lot of contractors, especially those service contractors working in plants and everything, and a lot of GCs require their subs to have a mod of a 1.0 or less, or they have to have a letter. Sometimes they look the other way if it was just one claim, but they look for frequency because they all believe that frequency breeds severity, and that's what triggers your mod. So you want to know more about mods, we can talk about that. Claims, how and when to file a claim. I pay all my claims. A lot of contractors say, you cut your finger, you go to a minor med, I just pay it. I don't want to turn them in. But the law says in the state you have to turn them in. So just have your agent turn it in for reporting purposes only. That way you're covered if the cut finger becomes gangrene or something crazy like that. Now, I've never had that happen.
I
But
always wondered how that affects your rate, because a lot of the insurance companies, I'm sure they want to see the losses that they suffered, but then these factors that an accident happened, it has to probably affect you negatively. I don't know.
well, each industry and each trade seems to have more claims in certain areas than other. It's just a fact. So if you don't know what that is, ask your agent. Do some research for you.
Yeah. So those claims, though, I guess the question is, when you don't make the claim, but you just file the accident, how does that affect our rate when we do?
Not
Because
at
they were
all.
always wanting to make sure you got to file it just in case it turns into something
Yeah,
really big.
no. It doesn't affect your mod at all.
So it doesn't. Okay.
No.
Okay.
So think of this, guys. Say the rate for electrical contractor, the best rate your agent can get you is $3 per $100 of payroll. And your experience mod is 0.75, and you're paying 25% less than that. And they give you premium discounts based on your volume. And so, guys, if you're not shopping your workers' comp, make sure that your agent's shopping that for you. Rates are good. It used to be workers' comp was the big part of what you paid insurance premiums for. Now it's vehicles, fortunately.
Wow. Yep.
So, guys, that's all I had to say. If you've got a situation where you do not feel like you're at fault on the claim, that you're getting the insurance agent all the information to turn into the adjuster, and make sure that you are the person the adjuster contacts and you are asking that adjuster, did you get that video we sent you? Had a claim where a subcontractor brought a backhoe late at night, left the forks out in the middle of the road, and a guy that was biking at midnight hit those forks and was severely injured.
Crazy
Stupid
stuff
things happen.
everywhere.
Stupid things happen. I could go on all day about that kind of stuff. But guys, I hope our listeners enjoyed it. I hope I didn't bore you too much. That's all I had to say.
But workers' comp is fun, and it is
It
fun
can
here
be.
on the Contractor Success Forum, right, Wade?
Absolutely.
It can be fun if you're a really weird person.
Yes. Well, we have all the weirdness you can find in one place.
Here, baby.
Stooges right here on the
Yeah.
Contractor Success Forum. Well, thanks a lot for coming out. If you're listening to the podcast, check out us on YouTube. And if you're looking at YouTube, hey, we have a podcast. So you can listen to this at your desk, in your car, wherever you want to go. Please subscribe. That helps us. And ask us any questions. So if you have any topics that you love for three crazy stooges to ramble about, give us some feedback. You can type it in that little message there, and go to contractorsuccessforum.com if you're just wondering where that is. You can even get the dialogue of this, whatever you call the words that are typed out.
Transcript.
That's it. The transcript of this. So I know y'all it's that valuable, and you want to just get this and study it. So thanks a lot.
That's really
Here it is at the Contractor Success Forum. And then we have Wade Carpenter and Company, CPAs, and Stephen Brown, McDaniel Whitley Bonding and Insurance Agency. And I'm Rob Williams, authoring the Pumpkin Plan for Contractors. Thanks a lot. See you soon.